Today, we're looking at a green ink in the Edelstein line from Pelikan Jade. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, it really does help me out if you check out the entire video. Also, if you're interested in different green inks, then you can go ahead down into the description and take a look at that playlist that's linked there. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. To standardize some of the writing, the first three writing samples are done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia dot pad. And let's get into that first one, 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. The medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both are showing us no real color variation. We're not getting it, but the smear test says you could likely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. To make sure there's a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with this Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, this Jinhao X450 with a medium nib, and this Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a TWSBI VAX 700 with a fountain pen Revolution broad nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. Now let's take a look at the second standard paper, 52 GSM Tomoe River. Almost forgot what it was called. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 15 seconds to dry. The medium is just a tad darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 26 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it. And the smear test, you could not recover this if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down and it's immediately put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this flees its way up. It all gathers up towards the top. It's not showing any kind of persistence here at all. Now the one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's dunked into water, and it looks exactly the same. So we're not expecting any kind of resistance from this ink. The last standard paper is 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It offers some spots of shading, like the K looks a little bit darker than the AN. The T is a bit darker than the letters around it. The end of Jade gets a bit darker. The extra fine is a little darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, moments of shading, like the OW of brown is a little lighter than the rest of the word. Fox starts a little lighter than it ends. So the shading is very minor in what's there, but it does give it a little bit of character with 8 seconds to dry. The medium is darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine far left to right shows some color variation. So does the medium, but the medium didn't get it in the writing. The extra fine did. And the smear test shows you could probably recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation because it's really getting woolly, and I just value my notes on things, so I wouldn't use it. But that makes sense when you remember the chromatography and look at what happens with water. Now the water is completely reactivating. It's starting to lift it, although it has not completely lifted it off the paper. It is going to do it. Pen Flush had a very strange reaction in this blue tone that showed up. And I can't explain exactly what happened. I looked at the paper towel that dabbed it up, and I didn't have any blue ink on there to transfer over, so that was strange. 1/3 bleach solution completely obliterated it. Now, it only took water to get this out of my pen. For the additional writing samples, the paper is always changed up just to give more experience with different paper. And this one is Leuchtturm 1917. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a little darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. There are a couple moments of shading, like the W of brown is a bit lighter than the rest of the word. Over starts a little lighter, gets a little darker, but the word the is much darker than the word quick. 6 seconds to dry. Now, the medium is the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, although the extra fine did have some, and the smear test says you likely are not recovering this if you smear while you're writing. For the inks tested, there is an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Edelstein's Jade has a viscosity of 1.55, making this a pretty wet ink. The next writing sample is done on Fabriano Eco Qua. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, a couple moments of darker, like the end of Edelstein is a bit darker, the L is a bit darker. Same with the quote on Jade. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. There's not shading, but there's definite tone variation we're seeing in the writing. Quick looks darker than the word brown. I mean, it's very interesting, but not really shading. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we're not really getting it except for some of the tone change from word to word. The smear test shows you could probably recover this if you smeared while you were. For the inks tested, there is an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Edelstein's Jade has an average dry time of 14 seconds, making it normal. The last writing sample is done on 28-pound premium copy paper. We do see some bleed that occurs at the scrubby, but not such a big deal, and some bleed spots occurring at the header done with the medium nib. Now, these spots would not stop most people from using the back of the page, and it definitely did not touch the page underneath. No real ghosting, so overall, this is not bad. The medium nib has feathering all over it, tiny little feathering, but in a work situation, I don't know that that's going to stop people from using it, that little bit of feathering. It doesn't really have spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, just that feathering all over. The extra fine is just a tad lighter than the stub. It only has feathering in its darker spots, like the letter K or the letter A. So only where the ink is a bit heavier on the paper does it seem to feather. No spread, no halo, no sheen, and yes, it does have some moments of shading, like the K in quick, the Q in quick, the H in the. 1 second to dry. Now the scrubby does show some color variation left to right. It does happen, but that is some of the danger here. In the smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like Edelstein's Jade, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a nice gray again from Caran Infinite Gray to not draw attention from this very nice green tone. If you'd prefer a different complement color, then take a look down in the description and you'll see links to the playlists here on the channel. So what do I think of Edelstein's Jade? As you see some of the writing, it came to my attention how different this is, and that was because apparently a little bit of yellow ink was left inside this pen because I'm a filthy animal and didn't clean that pen as well as it should have been clean, so my notes look different than the writing sample. Now, while this is a well-behaved and does offer some shading ink, I don't like it enough to pay the high price for a bottle of this. I just didn't feel like the performance was there. It is only through sampling that we get to learn these types of things. What nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? I really liked it out of a medium flow fine. I felt like that gave it its nicest performance and didn't draw attention to some of what it didn't have and gave just enough of the shading to make it look better. I hope you got something out of this video, and come back tomorrow. We're going to take a look at Iro Shizuku's Asagao.